This episode of the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast is brought to you by Gema. Gema powder coating systems offer you greater efficiencies while producing high-quality results. We provide the very best in powder delivery, application technology, and connectivity for smarter factory automation. With Gema, you get maximum performance and repeatability whether you are on the shop floor or away from it. For a demonstration, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. When you want to know that everything is covered, complete it with Gema.
Hello, all you powder coating fans, and welcome to episode 28 of the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast. I'm your host, Joe Powder, a.k.a. Kevin Biller, and with me, as always, is my esteemed colleague, erudite sidekick, Nathan. He's a recent graduate of the Terry Gross School of Interviewing Technique. He's also Powder Coating Research Group's formulator dude.
What's up, everybody? We're broadcasting from the Powder Coating Research Group studios in Columbus, Ohio.
Our fair city.
The purpose of the Ask Joe Powder Podcast is to bring the latest news and technical know-how to the global powder coating community. So let's get it rolling.
Yeah, but before we do,
Shout out.
I'd like to give a heartfelt shout out to our good friend Rick DeVore of DCL Pigments. And if you recall, that's the combination of what used to be Lansco Pigments and Dominion Color. Well, about a year ago in our episode number 5, we gave a more somber shout out to Rick, telling him to, quote unquote, get better. Said we were pulling for him. Back then, for confidentiality reasons, we didn't go into detail about Rick's condition. He was battling late-stage pancreatic cancer and was in really pretty bad shape. Well, got great news for everybody. After months of chemo and a strong fight and a couple of operations, Rick has been declared cancer-free, and actually they use the word cured by his team of doctors. I'd like to say kudos to Rick's dear friend Roland Vallon, who was instrumental in keeping us posted all along Rick's torturous journey. So hats off to Roland. But Rick, shout out to you. We're so happy that you're doing okay, you're feeling better. And one last note, and this is not surprising, we just heard, and this was from Roland, that Rick has decided to start a nonprofit foundation to help people who have cancer and have been released from their jobs and have no insurance coverage. So we may have information about that in the future, but this is one of those things with a happy ending. Anyway, now it's time for news in our Guess What segment.
Guess what?
I guess we'll do the numbers here real quick. There's reports from Coatings World. First one is Akzo Nobel came out with their Q1 2021 numbers. They're claiming 16% growth and significant step up in profitability for the first quarter of the year. Revenues up 10% and 16% higher in constant currencies. Strong growth in Asia. Their operating income is up. OPI margin is up. Adjusted operating income is up. And there's a bunch of numbers there. If you want to read the details, go to Coatings World.
Yeah, one thing, I think all these major global companies are seeing, the growth in Asia has been spectacular in the last couple of quarters. And I think if you break it down, I think the growth in some of the quote-unquote more mature markets are a little more modest, but overall, they're doing good. So it's good to hear.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is, when they talk about the first quarter 2021, year over year, if you're comparing anything to what happened in 2020, you have to kind of keep in mind that it was not a typical year. And so the numbers, need to be looked at in that context for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what are your numbers versus 2019.
Right.
You got those? Oh, okay. You'll get back to me? Fine, thanks.
All right, and Axalta also came out with their Q1 results. They announced the first quarter ending March 31st, net sales of $1,063 million. I guess that's a billion. That's an increase of 8.1% year over year, including a 3.2% foreign currency benefit driven by 4.6% higher volumes and 0.3% higher average price and product mix.
Oh, thank you, Kai Rizdal.
Right. All right, here's some more numbers for you. This one comes from PPCJ, and this is actually some pretty interesting stuff. PPG launched their 2020 sustainability report, and it highlights their strong continued progress against key environmental, social, and governance areas. And if you want to dig into the numbers on this one, the report's available at sustainability.ppg.com. But they released this report, and they're comparing their progress against these goals that they set for, by 2025, they want to hit these particular goals. For instance, 35% of the sales are from sustainably advantaged products and processes, including the launch of antibacterial and antiviral products, against their goal is 40% by 2025. 35% of manufacturing and research and development locations had zero process waste to landfill. There was a 25% goal for 2025 for the reduction in waste disposal intensity from their 2017 baseline, and they actually exceeded that goal with 34%. They had a 15% reduction in water intensity from their 2017 baseline against a goal of 20% by 2025, and 33% reduction in the spills and releases rate from 2017, and 24% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions since 2017. So those are pretty big numbers, especially, it seemed like they had some pretty high goals for their 2025, and it seems like they're right on track for improving the sustainability of their processes. Yeah,
it's interesting, Nate. You can kind of glance over this real quickly and say, some of this is fluff, and really, I think when you drill down, you find out that most of it is not fluff, and it is real, and it kind of shows that from a societal perspective, global companies, big, strong economic powerhouse companies, are affecting the world in a positive way if they wish to choose so. So, this is real promising stuff. Really good to see.
Yeah, 24% reduction in greenhouse gases from a company that size actually adds up to a huge reduction on a global scale. So
yeah, their enterprise is probably as big as like the country of Singapore or
right.
or Luxembourg or bigger, and it does make a difference, and it also provides leadership, I think, which is a good thing.
Indeed.
Okay, my friends, it's time now for the question and answer portion of our podcast.
Do you have a question? Ask Joe Powder. Well, you can ask him. Ask Joe Powder. He has the answer that'll advance your powder coating. It's the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast.
Okay, the first question comes from Tu Nguyen from Alphabet Coatings in Vietnam. I believe this is a follow-up question, right?
Yeah, he asked me a formulating question about how to improve the gloss of a couple of powder coatings they were formulating, and I thought, was thinking that topic was a little too dry. I'm sorry. That's a little powder joke here. But I think this other one has a little bit more universal appeal to our listening audience.
All right, so with that compelling backstory, here's the question. Hi, Joe. Thank you for giving solutions that helped us improve the gloss problem for our powder coatings. We'll try to learn to develop our products more. However, if you don't mind, please advise us on another issue. We're struggling to compete with competitors in the market. The same machine conditions, the same type of powder coating gun, the same voltage level, the same flow, the same passing speed. Our resin ratio that we use is 60 to 70%. We use an additive called DH103, but our paint only gives the product a thickness of 30 to 40 micrometers, while the paint of the rival company can produce products with a thickness of 60 to 70 micrometers. So what's the problem with our paint? We're trying to find the best solution and hopefully get some comments from you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for your question, too. You mentioned this additive DH103. I looked it up, and it's one of those electrostatic aids, your anti-static aids or whatever, that you can incorporate at a low level and hoping for some magic with the electrostatics of the powder. And I'm going to kind of set that one aside for now. And here's where I would go to. I understand your problem, but let's start right here with the primary, the most important property where you start to get the best transfer efficiency, and that would be particle size. I feel this is the single most important property when it comes to transfer efficiency, and let's just kind of break it down. What is the median particle size of your powder? But more important, what's the percent below 10 microns, and what's the percent above 100 microns? The other question I guess I have is, how do you measure particle size distribution? The most accurate way that we're aware of is using laser diffraction particle size analysis. And a key follow-up to that is, how do you control the particle size distribution? The next issue I have is, you mentioned 60 to 70% resin content, which that sounds reasonable. But what's the overall specific gravity of your product? Is it in line with your competitor's product, or is it higher? Higher specific gravity powder coatings probably are not going to have as good a transfer efficiency as something more reasonable. And specific gravity, I think a good range would be somewhere between 1.3 and maybe 1.5, 1.55 specific gravity. So I'd take a look at that, and if you're high, maybe look at tweaking your formula. The next question doesn't have to do with you, but it has to do with your customer, and how well are they maintaining their application system? Do they have a good earth or ground on their hangers and hooks? Are their spray guns well maintained? How often do they provide maintenance for their equipment? You may just be in a situation where you're catching them when the guns are on the late side of a maintenance schedule, and they're just not spraying as well as they do after they've been kind of cleaned and maintained. And finally, I just want to mention, you mentioned this DH103 additive. I'll tell you what, I'm not a big fan of adding these. I think it's more of a Band-Aid approach. It's like, if you don't do things right, you put that in and you hope it compensates for not doing things as well as you should. So I would try these other, pursue these other issues first, and then see where you land. And if that doesn't work, maybe consider using electrostatic additives. It's just something that's usually not needed in powder. So anyway, if you have any more questions, give me a holler. And one last thing, I think I know where your company's located. I think it's in the south part of Vietnam. Someday it'd be really nice to visit. Kind regards, Joe Powder. Okay, now a word from our sponsors.
Gama's OptiStar all-in-one control unit leads the industry with a design fusing electrostatics and power feed in one compact device. By combining the powder injector and control unit functionality into one device, you get the highest coating efficiency, fastest response times of powder output, and excellent cleaning performance. For more information, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. Configure it, feed it, optimize it, integrate it. Complete it with Gama.
The Powder Coating Research Group is a proud sponsor of the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast. PCR is the only independent laboratory dedicated to powder coating technology. We do everything from raw material evaluation, formulating the next generation of coatings, new product development, testing, troubleshooting, training, and consulting. To find out more, visit our website at powdercoatingresearch.com, or you can email Kevin Biller at kevinbiller@yahoo.com. Thanks for listening to the Ask Joe Powder Podcast. All right, and our next question comes from Johan in South Africa. He asks, Dear Joe, greetings from Johannesburg. I have a question. How can I increase the fluidity of powder coating?
Okay, this is kind of goes hand in hand with our last question in some respects, so let's just kind of tackle it. So, hello, Johan. Thank you for your question. Increasing the fluidity of a powder coating, and really for any powder material, can be tricky business. And for our listeners who are unfamiliar with fluidity, we're talking about the behavior in which a powder can allow air to evenly space between the particles and kind of separate them from each other, suspended more or less in air. This is a critical property in the application of powder coating. You see, in a powder coating application system, the bulk powder as it's delivered is introduced into a fluidized hopper. The fluidized hopper is typically either a cylindrical or box-shaped container that has a porous Teflon plate at the bottom. Compressed air is pushed through or passed through this porous plate into the powder that's sitting inside the container, and it creates or causes the powder to fluidize. This fluidization prepares the powder to be transported through the system, which the first mechanical stop is going through what we call a powder pump, and then through the hoses, and finally through the spray guns. What we're trying to do here is create a mixture of powder and air that is able to be pushed through the system. So fluidity, or the fluidization characteristics of a powder, is crucial in getting the powder to feed evenly through the system. And now to your question, Johan. A few factors are important in optimizing fluidity. First, like I said in the last answer, particle size distribution is critical. And note that I said distribution and not just particle size. This means that you have to manage the entire size distribution of the particles. Most important in managing this distribution is to minimize the quote-unquote fines. And fines can be defined as particles below 10 microns in diameter. As you might have guessed, less is better, and you should strive to have less than 6 or 7% fines in your powder coating. Too many fines will cause agglomeration, clumping, and with it poor fluidity. Now, ditto for large particles. By large, I'm talking about 100 microns and larger. These are more difficult to physically move with compressed air, and therefore they don't fluidize well either. I would set a target for somewhere less than 1% fraction over 100 microns for the best fluidization behavior. Okay, so after you nail your particle size distribution consistently, this is important, it's time to consider incorporating a dry blend or fluid flow additive. These are typically fumed silicas, or there's one type that's called, it's a fumed alumina, and these act as more or less ball bearings between the powder particles. These are really small particle size. They're kind of approaching the nano particle diameter, and they act like I said, ball bearings between the particles. Keep in mind that a little goes a long way. The addition process should be made during the powder coating manufacturing steps right after the extrusion process. And typically, powder coating manufacturers will add the fumed material with the extruded chips or flakes just prior to the pulverization process. It can be fed automatically, or some people will do it manually. But this ensures that these agglomerated fumed silica or fumed alumina get deagglomerated because of the impact and the intense action in the grinding or pulverization step, which is very important. If you don't get full deagglomeration of the fumed material, this may result in seeds and quote-unquote bits in the finished powder film due to these agglomerates protruding through the coating. Now there is one problem with this addition technique of adding your fumed silica or fumed alumina. Some of it can get sucked out of the grinding system and into the waste stream headed towards the bag house. It's pretty easy to see that when you clean out a bag house in a powder manufacturing facility. So some manufacturers have devised ways to introduce the silica after the grinding process, kind of just as it's being sifted or sieved, with a fancy kind of maybe proprietary deagglomeration technique. So keep that one in mind.
Hey, can you suggest the reason why someone would use fumed silica versus fumed alumina? Like, what would be the reason for one of those versus the other?
They both work. The alumina, in particular, tends to give you kind of a lower, a little bit of a lesser charge, which is not always the worst thing as long as it's, not too severe. But alumina typically goes a little bit towards a positive side in the way it behaves, frictionally in the system. What typically happens is a company will kind of hang their hat on one type of dry blend additive, and all their products will have it. So they'll all be compatible. So if you have multiple materials at a given customer, they'll be compatible. You can run into problems if one powder has fumed alumina and then it's followed by another one that has fumed silica, or vice versa, because they're gonna kind of influence the charging capability or chargeability of the powder. So the silicas typically will give you a little bit more towards the negative size of charging. So
they have different effects on the electrostatics, but as far as fluidizing goes, they're behave similarly.
They do. There is another subtlety where with the silicas, the fumed silicas, you can get a grade that's either treated or non-treated, which is going to make it either hydrophilic or hydrophobic. Some people believe, and you'd have to back it up with studies and data, but some people believe the hydrophilic fumed silica, which is the non-treated, will actually pick some moisture out of the ambient environment and give you better fluidization and less clumping due to humidity. And that's it's important to make sure that it's happening. So Anyway, the last thing I mentioned, I mentioned a little goes a long way, and I would shoot for a concentration well below 1%. I'd say 0.2% is where I'd start. If you can go with less, that's even better. Okay, I hope this helps, Johan, and I hope that you and your loved ones in South Africa are all doing well. Kindest regards, Joe Powder. Okay, everyone, before we let you go, we'd like to fill you in on some upcoming events.
Hey, friends, where are we going? To an upcoming event.
All right, coming up in June, 22nd and 23rd, the Powder Coating Kitchen, Introduction to Powder Coating Formulation. That is our short course that we put on here at the lab, and we teach you all about the building blocks that go into the powder coatings, and ultimately how to put them together and everything that is involved in the process.
Yeah, it's a hands-on course, and I think, we've always had really, really good reviews. We don't just have you sitting listening to lectures. We break it up with live demos in the lab, and it kind of culminates into asking you, the novice formulator, to actually formulate a powder coating, and we'll see how well you do.
Right, and July 13th through 15th is the powder coating portion of the Powder Coating Week. That's the Powder Coating Institute's week-long event along with CCAI. It's going on in Orlando at SeaWorld. And if you tuned into the last episode, the interview with the PBG ladies, then you would know that we're going to be attending. So,
yeah, come stop by and see us. Although we're going to be on the move, so send us a text.
Buy us beer.
Yeah, send up us smoke signals or carrier pigeon.
All right, and then the 22nd and 23rd of September, the Powder Coating Summit. That's our event that takes place in Columbus, Ohio, and that'll be at the Hilton Polaris. Go to powdersummit.com for more information on that one.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think this fall we're going to start seeing people again.
Right,
it's going to be great, and we hope everybody's healthy in the meantime.
The 27th through 29th of September is the Middle East Coating Show, and that's taking place in Dubai, UAE.
Kind of in closing, for me at least, is you can catch the Ask Joe Powder Q&A, which is the old school, in print. You can get it on the websites of Powder Coated Tough Magazine, which is the flagship publication of the Powder Coating Institute. You can also find it kind of more or less in Europe and the Middle East with PPCJ, which is Polymers, Paint, and Color Journal. Our good friends publishing that out of the UK. And you can also find it in PCI Magazine. That's Paint and Coatings Industry Magazine, PCImag.com, under their Finishing Flash tab.
All right, you can find us online at askjoepowder.com. If you want to sign up and find out about the episodes when they come out, use any of your favorite podcasting apps for that. We're on Apple's and Google's and Spotify's and everything else. We have a YouTube channel where we've been putting the interview episodes on there. Who knows, in the future we might put more content on there, but if you just want to subscribe, it'll let you know when anything new comes up there. If you want to ask a question for Joe, the email address is askjoepowder@yahoo.com, or you can call in, leave a message at country code 1-478-2-ASK-JOE. That's 1-478-227-5563. This has been a production of the Powder Coating Research Group. Our audio design, music, editing, all that sort of stuff is done by Nick Page. If you'd like to support the podcast, fill a duffel bag with unmarked $20 bills with no sequential serial numbers, and leave it on my back porch. If you want ad-free versions of all of our episodes, send 6.5 Bitcoin to me, and I'll email them to you. If you want exclusive access to our bonus episodes, including episode 22, leave a PlayStation 5 and an RTX 3090 in a Porsche GT2 with the keys and a notarized title in the glove box, and leave it in the parking lot of the lab.
And keep your powder dry, my friends.
Thank you for listening to the Ask Joe Powder Powdcast. This episode was brought to you by Gama. Gama's newest Optiflex Pro model, the CF unit, offers simple, reliable color change in 20 seconds. The Optiflex Pro CF unit is the perfect solution for lab use, powder quality testing, and coating of small quantities or small size samples. For more information, call 877-437-6771. Once again, that's 877-437-6771. And be sure to mention, Ask Joe sent me. When you want to know that everything is covered, complete it with Gama. Raycon, only earbuds that keep powder out of your ears.
Raid Shadow Legends.
Join now with 1,000 free coins.
Yeah. Get your V-Bucks. Okay.
What are you guys even talking about?
You don't listen to podcasts, do you? They all have the same advertisers. Like, we should do some spoof
Beats.
Blue Apron